This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, John Rauda back with episode 37 of A Geek Leader, and today I want to talk about the power of a field trip. Now, I've talked about this once before when we talked about how to inspire creativity for your team, but I want to get into a little bit more details about this. I want to share a couple of stories about how different size field trips can benefit your team. What I mean by a field trip doesn't necessarily mean get on a bus and go somewhere. It could be as simple as getting out of your office and walking around a pond. It could be going out and sitting with your users for a little bit to engage with them and figure out what's going on and see things from their perspective. A lot of times when you're working in a traditional office space, you get kind of caught up in your environment and you see things that you see every day from your own perspective because you've been there for a while and you're following the same mindset, and nothing is there to kind of jolt your brain or inspire something that you don't see on a regular basis. So I want to talk about a field trip that I had my team take a few years ago. At a previous job, we were trying to figure out how technicians use an app that we had created, a mobile app, and what was the best way to do them. So we actually got people on our team, some of our developers, to sit in trucks and ride around with technicians while they troubleshooted problems and worked on things. We kind of saw how they do their day-to-day activities. And we actually took some notes. We learned a lot about the way that they use the app, but what was even more surprising is we learned of ways that we could solve problems with that team and help them out in ways that they didn't even ask. We learned about moving things around to different areas, making fonts different, hiding certain fields that we thought were important to the users that we found out later that, after taking this trip and riding around with them, that they weren't important with them. What's even more important than all these things is that we got to know the people that are actually using our app, and we got to learn them on an individual basis and realize that these are people, and these people have feelings, and they have things that they like and things that they don't like. They have perspectives, they have their own experiences, and they have value that they can bring to us when we're building these things for them. And we found out that one of the technicians showed us kind of how they use the app, and then we noticed that a lot of technicians use this, and they get tickets and troubles that come to them through this app, and they would read them and figure out what they needed to do to solve the problem. They would go out and fix the problem. But then what we found is that we assumed that the process would be that they would just close the tickets as they completed them. But that's not the case. What happened is they would fix 5 or 6 problems and then in bulk close the tickets. Open one, scroll to the bottom, close it. Open the next one, scroll to the bottom, close it. And they would do that. And if you think about having to do this, 10 to 12 tickets per day over hundreds of technicians, that's a lot of time. I mean, that is real time that they're spending scrolling. And we all know how painful it is to scroll. We don't like to scroll. So how can we relieve this problem? And we found that really simple. We can just copy that button and move it to the top and solve problems. And that was able to allow technicians to get home early, to leave work a little bit early, and to get back to their families. That was a way that we can inspire our team that we're actually not just building something for them to do their jobs. We're building something to make their life easier. We're building something to give them more time with their families. And that was motivational, not just for the techs to be able to do things better, but it was for the developers, that we have now purpose in the things that we're doing. And we've been able to take that purpose, not just for that one app, but for many apps. Now when we build something for different groups, we think, how is this going to make their life easier? How is this going to better their life outside of work? Can we do something that will make their life better outside of the work? And we were able to bring that inspiration into all of the things that we were created. And that was from a small field trip. That was something little. But I want to talk about a bigger field trip. And I used this story when I gave my TED Talk, so it may not be new to all of you, but it does bear repeating. And that's the story of Doug Dietz. And I've got a couple of videos in the show notes of Doug, one giving his TED Talk about this, but also kind of just talking about what inspired him. So Doug designs MRI machines. If you're like me, you spent some time inside of MRI machines. I tore my ACL. I've had one for my shoulder and one for my wrist. I've been in the MRI machine a lot. When you show up to get your MRI, they make you take all metal things off, and which is kind of awkward. You're emptying out your pockets, your wallet, taking off your ring if you have a ring. Then you walk into this room, and everything in the room is about the same color. This off beige, kind of gray looking color. It almost looks like you stepped into a black and white TV. But you get in this room and you're looking at it, and there's this big sticker on the wall that says like, warning, danger, no metal objects. If you've had metal pins, please alert your doctor right now. And honestly, the first time you've been in there, you're like, holy cow, what's about to happen? What's going on here? Then they lay you down on this little table that kind of smells a little funny. There's the paper mat that they put on the doctor's trays that feels uncomfortable and rustles when you move. And then they slide you this machine into this tube. And this little scary tube kind of covers you. And it is pretty terrifying, not to mention, especially if you're claustrophobic. If you're claustrophobic, you're going to be nervous going into an MRI machine. But you get in there, and then all of a sudden, just as it's quiet and you're inside this thing, you start hearing this like bop, 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 bop noise. And it's kind of loud noise, and it smells all sterile in there, and you're like, what is going on? I don't know what's happening. And there's not anybody else in the room to kind of talk you through this. They're outside of the room looking through an enclosure. So Doug designed these machines, and after one of his creations that he was most proud of, he was very proud of the way this machine functioned and how it worked. He went down to watch it in action. And he tells the story, and it's a very emotional story, and it's a heartbreaking story, of the first patients that come in there are pediatric patients. And the girl is crying coming down the hallway that she has to go into this machine. Now, again, this, at the moment, Doug is he is excited to see his creation in action that he had just, this is his greatest accomplishment thus far. And the person coming to use it is terrified of it. And it's supposed to be there to help them. It's supposed to be there to save their lives. But the user is actually scared of it. How many of our softwares are like that? How many things do we create that our users are actually scared about using? They're nervous that they're going to break something and mess something up. Let's think about that as we're building things and moving forward. But anyway, as Doug goes in there and he sees this girl is scared, and her dad kind of tries to encourage her and tells her that she can get through this, they take her in, and in order to complete the MRI, she has to be sedated. And what Doug finds out is about 80% of the patients that go through MRI machines have to be sedated. So this was unnerving to him, and he felt like his creation was a failure. He felt like he had just created something that was terrible. So he went back to the drawing board, and he brought in children and other users and everybody he could think of to see how can we make this scary thing be more inviting. How can we make it that kids would not be scared to come in to get an MRI? So you probably need to go to the show notes for this at ageekleader.com. And I've created a special link called ageekleader.com/field trips. And on that page, you can get this whole episode, but you can also see the pictures of the before and after for his MRI machines. But what they did is they looked at this machine that was all kind of the same color, very scary looking, and they painted it. I mean, as simple as that. They painted it. They made it look like something out of a pediatric doctor's office. They painted up the walls all around it were painted, and they even went further than that. They put smells inside the room. They brightened up the room so it wasn't so dark and scary. They made it look almost like an adventure land. And kids were actually more excited to be there. And Doug said that after they made these changes, they came back, and he watched children go down there. And kids would walk in, and they would see that the room was bright. It was airy. It didn't smell of sterile. Sometimes they would put scents in there of pina colada or something that the parents would smell, and they would smile, and that would make the kids at ease. And it looked almost like a little adventure land. And it would settle their fears a little bit. Not only were they terrified of whatever procedure they were going through. Maybe they have cancer. Maybe they hurt themselves and they're injured. Who knows? But this was one thing that wouldn't make things worse. It wouldn't make things scarier. It wouldn't bring down the situation. It would make it happier, make it easier. And it was a very simple change. But this all came about because a user, a designer, a builder wasn't afraid to take a field trip, see his creation in action, and not just see it in action, but realize that it wasn't perfect. Realize that the things that he built wasn't as good as it can be, and go back to the drawing board and ask for help, and ask for those to help him to make this better. And that's what Doug did, and it's one of my favorite stories to tell. It's one of my favorite stories to hear, and And I think it adds value to what we can do as leaders. We can go and learn from other experiences, and we need to understand that the things that we create and the things that we build aren't perfect at first. We should go see them in action. We should see how they're used. We should see how we can improve upon them. Not just go to bask in the glory of our creation, but go and see what's wrong with our creation and how we can make it better. And that's what Doug did here. So prior to Doug's change, I mentioned that 80% of pediatric patients had to be sedated going through an MRI. Anybody going to an MRI in his newly created and designed machines that are kid-friendly is less than 20% of those patients have to be sedated. So it's a huge impact because there's dangers and risks that come with sedating patients. Plus, it's just not good for them. It's parents don't like to see their kids sedated, and knowing that a kid comes there and they can leave with a smile on their face, not being afraid, is just an amazing accomplishment. So please head over to ageekleader.com/field trips to learn more about this. There's links to Doug's TED Talk at TEDx San Jose, and another link showing some of his work and why he helped transform this for children and their families. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It was a short one. It's a little bit different than before. We'll get back to some longer episodes and have a few more interviews coming up in the coming weeks. But if you don't mind, I have a technical leadership survey that I'm still trying to get people to fill out at ageekleader.com/technical survey. You'll see a link right there on the homepage for that as well. And also, if you've enjoyed this, please head over to iTunes or Google Podcast or Stitcher and leave a review. Any rating and review is very helpful. And again, share this with your friends, with your colleagues, trying to grow the audience a little bit and teach more people about the power and impact that you can have as a leader. So until next time, have a happy 4th of July and a good summer.